Amen. If you grab your Bibles, as you grab your seat, turn with me to Ecclesiastes chapter 11. We'll be covering chapters 11 and 12 this morning to wrap up our study. It sounds like a lot, but I think we can move through it fairly quickly. Ecclesiastes beginning in chapter 11. It might be kind of strange to say as we are concluding our study through a book which is within the genre of wisdom literature. But it might be strange to say that sometimes being aware of your ignorance is as useful as having knowledge. I'll give you a couple examples of what I mean by that. When you see a sign that says danger high voltage, essentially what that means is if you don't know what you're doing, you best leave it alone, right? So in that instance, you don't actually have to know how to work with high voltage equipment. You just need to know that you are ignorant of how to work with high voltage equipment and keep your hands off of it, right? I mean, we could apply this same concept to lots of different things, like car repair. I know how to change the oil. I know how to change the spark plugs, but I'm not going to be trying to rebuild a transmission anytime soon. I'm ignorant in that area, and I'm going to trust someone else who actually knows what they're doing. If you're a home renovator and you're not sure if a wall is load-bearing or not, and you don't know how to tell the difference, you best just leave it alone, right? Or ask somebody who knows what they're doing. So oftentimes, being aware of your ignorance can be as helpful as actually having knowledge. Well, as we conclude our study through the book of Ecclesiastes, what Solomon is going to tell us is he's actually aware of his ignorance and that we should be aware of our ignorance as well. That he has many times helped us to see the value in wisdom, but he's also every single time helped us to recognize the limitations of wisdom. And so we've been working our way through this book, and Solomon has been endeavoring to answer this question. What is the purpose? What is the meaning of life? And he has tried one thing after another. Is it pleasure? No. Is it wisdom? No. Is it companionship? No. Well, I hope this isn't disappointing to you, but essentially Solomon's conclusion is, I don't know. I don't know the answer to the meaning of life, and yet that lack of knowledge informs how we should live our lives. I'll show you what I mean by that. Let's begin with chapter 11, verses 1 through 8. Solomon tells us, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days." So in the beginning here, verses 1 through 8, Solomon is going to emphasize the mystery of life. He's going to emphasize the limitations of our understanding. He's going to emphasize the many things that we are ignorant about, things that we don't know about. And there are two ways to read this first verse that basically say the same thing. Some would read this as Solomon encouraging us to be charitable, give bread to people who are in need. And he says sometimes when you do that, when you're charitable, you give to people that you think are in need, you don't actually know how that offering is going to be used. Is it going to be used well? It might feel like just throwing bread into water. But you don't actually know how your life is going to go either. And so if you are charitable today, there might come a day when you need someone to be charitable to you tomorrow. That's one way to read it. Another way to read it is him actually talking about sending grain across the seas on ships. He's here actually telling you to, if you do have some kind of wealth, to diversify your assets by participating in trading, okay? And the reason you would diversify your assets is, it's kind of the English saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. He's saying you don't actually know what's going to happen in the future, and so it is wise to diversify your assets. So either translation, the main point of what he's saying is, if you're honest, you don't know what tomorrow brings. You don't know what's going to happen. And so because of our ignorance, we should live differently because of the things that we do not know. Verse 2 is the same thing, same point really. Give a portion to 7 or even to 8. So here you can read it in the same two ways. This is either be charitable to many different people, or diversify in many different ways. Well, why would we do this? For you know not what disaster may happen on earth. The point you would do either of those things, the reason you do either of those things is because of the limitation of knowledge, man's knowledge, the limitation of our wisdom, our information. Verse 3, if the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves on earth. Whether you want it or not, there are times when you wish it would rain and it does not. There are times when you wish it would not rain and it does rain. And Solomon is ultimately saying, you don't understand it, you don't have control over it. And if a tree falls to the south or to the north, this is a tree that falls on accident, not a tree that you are chopping down, right? I mean, sometimes you're chopping down a tree and it doesn't fall where you want it to fall, but not if you know what you're doing. That's another instance of know what you know and what you don't know, okay? But when a tree falls on accident, in the place where the tree falls, there it will be. Meaning you, again, do not have control over this. Whether you wanted it to fall in this direction or that direction, it's beyond your control. So he's emphasizing, again, our lack of control, our lack of knowledge, our lack of ability. Verse 4, someone might assume because there is so much outside of our control, outside of our understanding, that we should just sit and wait and not do anything until we have better understanding. And he's saying, no, that's a mistake too. He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. Meaning if you're going to wait to act and to live your life until you have all of life figured out, don't hold your breath. Another saying there. You're not going to figure it out. You will be always waiting. Verse 5, as you do not know the way the Spirit comes into the bones in the womb of a woman with child, so you do not know the work of God who makes everything. He's saying there's this great mystery that none of us understand, that somehow God weaves together an eternal spirit with a physical body inside the womb of a woman. He's saying, do you understand how to do that? No, you certainly don't. None of us do. It is mysterious to us. And he is ultimately trying to emphasize that the list of things that we do not know is significantly longer than the list of things that we do know. He's bringing us down from any feeling of pride about what we know or our knowledge. He's trying to humble us. Okay? Now, for this reason, in a spirit of humility, the best thing we can do is to get to work. Verse 6, in the morning, sow your seed, and at evening, in the evening, withhold not your hand. Meaning, don't let this mystery of life, your lack of being able to understand all of it, cause you to be lazy or inactive. Instead, the better result would be to hedge your bets and to work more, because you do not know which will prosper, this or that, or whether both alike will be good. So don't let the mystery of life cause you to be inactive or lazy. Secondly, don't let the mystery of life steal enjoyment from your life. Verse 7, light is sweet, and it is pleasant for the eyes to see the sun. He's saying life ultimately has many good things that we are meant to enjoy. Even if we don't understand all of life, even if our knowledge is limited, we can still enjoy it. Verse 8, so if a person lives many years, let him rejoice in all of them. But let him remember that the days of darkness will be many. All that comes is vanity. It's the word that Solomon has used over and over and over when he said, no, this is not the purpose or the meaning of life. And it has a wide range of meaning. It can be emptiness. But here it's talking about it's temporary. It's a vapor. It does not last. We can have good, happy lives with many enjoyable things in them, but ultimately the days after our life are significantly more than the days of our life. And he's saying you should live your life in light of that. That this is kind of surprising. Solomon is the wise guy. I mean, not like he's a wise guy like cracking, but as we think of the spokesman for wisdom, it is Solomon. And yet as he comes to the end of his book, what he wants us to remember and what he wants to emphasize here is the limitations of wisdom, the limitations of our knowledge, and how much of life is a mystery. much of life is beyond our control. We don't understand how God weaves together an eternal spirit with a physical body. We don't have control over whether the clouds are going to rain or whether the trees are going to fall. And because of our lack of control and our lack of understanding, this actually informs how we should live our lives. That we should live remembering that much in life is mysterious and outside of your control. Live remembering that much in life is mysterious and outside of your control. And surprisingly, Solomon's trying to be encouraging here. That's maybe not his strong suit when it comes to his writings. But this is actually meant to encourage us, meaning that if this is how you feel, that life is mysterious to you and much is outside of your control, welcome to the club. You're not the loser who can't figure out life. You're just a person like everybody else. So be encouraged by that, okay? This is also meant to be something that humbles us. If you are a person who thinks you've got it all figured out and you think you are in control, you are deceived. What Solomon is telling us here is that we need regular reminders that we are not God. I'm going to say that again. I'm going to make it a regular reminder. We need regular reminders that we are not God. We are certainly not as wise as God. We certainly do not have the kind of control over our lives that God has. Why is this such an important reminder? Well, the root of sin is us trying to take God's place. I mean, if we go back to Genesis 3, the first sin, Eve didn't look that closely at the fruit until Satan told her, if you eat of it, you will be like God. And then she noticed that it looked good to eat. And so whatever the sin is, ultimately it is us trying to take God off the throne of our lives and put us there instead. So does that help us to see why it's so important to be regularly reminded that we are not God? It will remind us that we are not meant to be on the throne where He is meant to be. And so, ironically, there is wisdom in knowing what you do not know. It helps us to live differently when we remember that there are many things that are mysterious to us. And so a good way to think of mystery, especially when it comes to God and the world that we live in, is mystery is something that is true, but it's beyond our capacity to fully understand it. It's not a mystery like, it was Colonel Mustard in the foyer with the candlestick. It's not we're trying to solve the mystery. It's something that we accept that we will never fully understand. And so there are many things that are true about God, many things that are true about this world that are true, but we cannot fully wrap our brains around it. That is a humbling thing. It's not meant to drive us to despair. It's meant to drive us to humility. I remember being a late teen, a young adult, and there's something about being that age where you've just got it all figured out. You're a genius. There's nobody who's ever been as smart as you, and if only your parents were as smart as you were, right? And I remember at that stage in my life being very uncomfortable with mystery, especially as it pertained to faith. To me, it just felt like a cop-out. There's this hard question. I want to be able to answer it, and just to say, oh, that's a mystery, felt like me admitting a weakness to my faith. I mean, if I can't answer every question fully, then maybe I'm a fool for believing in this God or in this Jesus. But through time and through the work of the Holy Spirit and the process of sanctification, I have began to learn that in reality, I was a fool for believing that I had the capacity to understand everything. I thought much too highly of my intellectual ability. And this impulse is driven more by my pride than it was by my compassion for the person that I was hypothetically going to share the gospel with, and I needed to be able to answer every question. This lack of comfort with mystery was driven by my pride rather than having a hunger for wanting to know God more fully. And it is much wiser, it's for me to recognize my limitations than to let intellectual capacity set the limitation of my faith. I'm only going to believe in what I can understand. that limits you to believing in a very small God. If you're only going to believe in what you fully understand, you're not going to believe in the God of the Bible. I've probably used this illustration before because it's one of my favorites. You realize that your brain has a limited capacity, right? Anybody? Show of hands. Your brain has a limited capacity, okay? So here's the metaphor. If your brain is a Coke can, which holds 12 ounces, if your brain is a Coke can, God is all of the oceans, which is still not a perfect metaphor because God is infinite, right? And all of the oceans are limited. But it gives you a picture. How much of the oceans can you fit into your Coke can? Is that the God that you really want to worship and serve? Do you really want to limit God to the capacity of your intellect? No, of course not. And so here's the good news. It's not what we're called to do. Proverbs 3:5, which was also written by Solomon, says, "Trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not on your own understanding." Meaning, the good news is your heart has the ability to trust beyond your intellectual capacity. Thank the Lord that we can trust in a God who is so much more enormous than our brains. And so, what we are not meant to do, verse 4, it's he who observes the wind, is this picture of someone who's waiting to act until they understand. We are not called to be obedient when we've figured it out, when we've solved the mystery. We are called to be obedient despite the mystery, despite not being able to figure it out. And so are you willing to take up your cross even when you don't understand why Jesus is having you carry that cross in that moment? Or are you only willing to move when you see the full plan? Guess what? God doesn't reveal the full plan to us very often. He reveals to us the next step of obedience he's calling us to take. And even when that step is mysterious to us, we are not meant to fold our hands and to watch the wind. We're meant to move in obedience. And so first, this is not driving us to despair, it's driving us to humility. And secondly, it's driving us to trust. Let me say it again. If your brain is a Coke can, God is all of the oceans. Do you trust someone who is so much more enormously wise and powerful and good than you are? I hope you do, because he deserves it. If the root of sin is trying to take God's place, then the root of worship is recognizing you aren't God. That the one who is so much more enormous than us deserves our worship. And so first, he calls us to remember this, that life is mysterious and much is outside of your control. But there's another thing that he wants us to remember as we keep reading. Look now at verses 9 through 12:8. Solomon wrote, "Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and the sight of your eyes, but know that for all these things God will bring you into judgment." So Solomon is going to bring a comparison between the stage of life which we describe as youth and the stage of life that we would describe as old age. At the first church I served at, we had, instead of the joy group, they were called the senior saints. And I had one blessed senior saint tell me that the word old is a 4-letter word. And I was like, "I'm sorry, sir, but you can't count. I'm not a great speller, but I'm pretty sure you got that one wrong, right?" And so we're going to have to talk about what it means to be old in this passage. Hopefully that doesn't offend you. Maybe you're not old. Maybe, but if this passage describes you, maybe you are. I don't know. We'll find out, okay? So it is a comparison between being youthful and being older. And first he's saying that there is a good thing about being young, and that you should enjoy youth while you can, but enjoy it within God's parameters. Don't let your youth lead you into sin, because God sees everything and he will bring all of our actions into judgment. While you are young, verse 10, you should remove vexation from your heart like don't worry, enjoy this stage of life. You should put pain away from your body, meaning enjoy a healthy body, stay healthy if you can, because it's not going to last. For youth and the dawn of life are vanity. It's a vapor. It is temporary. Verse 1 of chapter 12. Remember, this is our second remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw near of which you will say, I have no pleasure in them. Now I hope there are people in the room today who would put themselves in the category of older, and yet they would say, I don't identify with what Solomon is describing here. I still have great pleasure in my life. Well, understand what Solomon is describing here. He's not just describing old age, he's describing old age without God. Meaning, once you have lost the comforts and the enjoyments and the pleasures and the vigor of youth, you have less to distract you from if you don't have God. And so his description here is of old age without God, because the solution is to remember your Creator. So if you remember your Creator, even as you grow older, you will still have pleasure in your life because you find your pleasure in God himself, as opposed to finding pleasure in the vigor of life, if that makes sense. So here is the description. It's this vividly poetic description of what it's like to grow older. Verse 2. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are darkened. Often with old age, you lose your vision. It becomes darker, and the clouds return after the rain. Often in old age, you have clouded vision. Verse 3, in the day when the keepers of the house tremble. So we can have several metaphors for different parts of the body. Here, the keepers of the house are hands that aren't as steady as they used to be. And the strong men are bent. This is a back bent by old age. And the grinders cease because they are few. Grinders being teeth. You can't chew as well as you used to, in particular because you have less teeth than you used to. And those who look through the windows are dimmed. This is again describing your eyes not having the same sparkle as they used to when you were younger. Verse 4, and the doors on the street are shut. These are the ears which don't hear as well as they used to, which we go on with that description. When the sound of the grinding is low, meaning you can't even hear the grinding stone when it's going. And yet, ironically, and one rises at the sound of a bird. So your hearing is worse, but your sleep is lighter, so that even a tiny sound wakes you up from your sleep. And all the daughters of song are brought low. So you hear the things you don't want to hear, and you can't hear the things you want to hear, which are beautiful songs. Verse 5, they are afraid also of what is high, meaning in old age, you become more feeble, more fragile. It's not safe for you to be on a ladder like you could do when you were a young buck, right? And the terrors are in the way, meaning you're afraid of things that you used to not be afraid of. The almond tree blossoms. Almond trees have white blossoms, so this is describing your hair becoming white or gray. And the grasshopper drags itself along. You're not as strong as you used to be. Even to carry a grasshopper, it feels like it's dragging. And desire fails. So depending on your translation, a more literal translation says the caperberry fails, which was believed to be an aphrodisiac in Solomon's day, meaning they didn't have a pill back then, if you're following what I'm saying here, which for Solomon, I would imagine it really makes you question your decision making when you have 700 wives and 300 concubines and the caperberry no longer works. Because man is going to his eternal home, and the mourners go about the streets, meaning all of these things are pointing towards what inevitable end? A time of mourning. Verse 6 through 8 is this vivid, poetic description of beautiful, useful things being irreparably broken, which represents the loss of human life. Before the silver cord is snapped, or the golden bowl is broken, or the pitcher is shattered at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern, and the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Because from dust we were made, and to dust we will return. Vanity of vanities, vapor of vapors, says the preacher. All is vapor. Everything in life, he says, ultimately is empty. It's vapor. It's passing away. It is not the answer to eternity. And so what does he want us to remember? How are we supposed to live our life? Well, we need to live remembering that the end of your life is inevitable. Live remembering that the end of your life is inevitable. Let me say it again. We need regular reminders that we are not God. We certainly are not immortal, all-powerful, indestructible like God is. As I was studying through this passage on Thursday, I was sitting at my computer, and it hit me that all day long my left shoulder was hurting. At first it just felt kind of sore, and then as the day went on, it just hurt more and more and more. And then it hit me, particularly as I was working through this passage, I don't even know how I heard it. I have no idea. And I'm 36, right? And so if I can get injured without even knowing how it happened, I can't imagine what it feels like to be 60, okay? So there is wisdom in knowing our limitations. We are meant to live life differently, remembering that death is coming. Body aches are meant to be a grace of God because they are your regular reminder that life is short, time is fast, and your life is coming to an end. They are your regular reminder of asking this all-important question: what do I want to do with my life? Because there are many ways of life that are a waste of life. So it is wise to remember regularly that your life, the end of your life, is inevitable. What do you want to do with your life? Personally, I don't want to watch hours of TV a day because Paul tells us in Ephesians 5 to look carefully how you walk, not as unwise but as wise, making the best use of time because the days are evil, meaning they're short. They're coming to an end faster than you would expect. They are a limited commodity. And I hope you can identify with the feeling. I feel like God is calling me to do more things than I have time to do. But here's the problem with that. God knows exactly how much time I have. So could it be that I have too many Shan ideas instead of God ideas? Or could it be that I am not continuously remembering that I was made from dust and I am going to return to dust, meaning I am spending my life on things that are a waste of life, rather than on the things that God is truly calling me to do? How foolish is it to spend a limited resource on things that don't matter? I mean, if you imagine you only have enough gas for necessities to get to work and back, to get to the grocery store and back, I'm just going to assume that you're not going to be cruising around on joyrides for fun. You're going to use that limited commodity wisely. Church, your life is a limited commodity. Your end is inevitable. We do not have the luxury of wasting our lives because we have a God who deserves all of the glory and all of the honor and all of the praise. He deserves for his kingdom to be advanced. He has called us out on this great commission. So I said it before. I promise this text is not driving us to despair. Instead, it is driving us to trust in God. What he is calling you to do with your life is a better use of your life than just pleasure, just relaxation. Now, Solomon has told us many times that we are meant to enjoy life. So I am not disagreeing with that. God is not calling us to misery. And yet, let's recognize that every day is part of a limited resource. And so he's calling us to trust him more, and here it is, the conclusion of the book, verses 9 through 14. Besides being wise, the preacher also taught the people knowledge. So this is you see the transition in the style here. So this is properly his conclusion. And he's saying that, the preacher was wise, and more than that, he brought wisdom to us, weighing and studying and arranging many proverbs with care. We're thankful for the wisdom that he brought to us. Verse 10, the preacher sought to find words of delight, and uprightly he wrote words of truth. Probably you haven't read Ecclesiastes and thought, well, these are words of delight, right? And yet a good warning is a word of delight. Don't waste your life in these ways. Verse 11, the words of the wise are like goads, which is a cattle prod, meaning it is meant to guide and to direct us and correct us. The words of the wise are like nails firmly fixed, are the collected sayings, and they are given by one shepherd. So these wise truths that Solomon have given us, he's saying these are good things. Don't throw them away, and yet recognize their limitation. Verse 12, my son, beware of anything beyond these. Of making many books there is no end, and much study is a weariness of flesh. He's saying don't waste your time trying to answer this question, what is the purpose or the meaning of life, in the same way that I have spent my life trying to answer this question. You're not going to come across something that I did not try. Do not go beyond this. You could write many, many, many more books, and in the way that I have tried to answer this question, there's no amount of books that will answer this question. I've exhausted all of the possible answers. It's not pleasure. It's not companionship. It's not labor. It's not building great monuments. It's none of those things. So don't waste your time. Instead, here's what you should do. Verse 13, the end of the matter, all has been heard. I'm saying I tried it all. And has he given us the answer? No. He ultimately doesn't firmly know, but what he's saying is there is one more option. One more thing that I haven't honestly really tried. And it's this: fear God and keep his commandments. Solomon's saying, guess what? If there is an answer to this question, God is the one who has the answer. For this is the whole duty of man. He is the creator, we are the creature. He is the designer, we are the designed. So if anyone has the answer to this question, it is only God. Ultimately, Solomon is saying, I don't know what the purpose or the meaning of life is, but God does. It's interesting that he never even considers that there is no purpose or meaning of life, because he knows enough about God that he doesn't allow that to be an option. That God doesn't design things purposelessly, without reason, on accident. Now, he knows enough about God and the fact that God has set eternity into the hearts of man that all of this exists for some reason. He just can't put his finger on it. So his best solution is, I guess I should just trust God even with the mystery. I wish I could understand it. I wish I could wrap my brain around it. I wish I could solve this question, but I can't. So the last option is to trust God with it. He ultimately, verse 14, trusts in the sovereignty of God. For God will bring every deed into judgment, every secret thing, whether good or evil. Meaning nothing is getting past God. He's not unaware of what's happening in this world. We haven't lost the purpose that he intended us for. It must be there even though Solomon can't see it. And so the best thing we can do in this mystery is to trust God. We could say it in this way: live remembering that nothing is mysterious or hidden from God, and that everyone's end is under his control. Now that is a great answer to the tension that we feel in our first two truths this morning. Much is mysterious and outside of our control, and our end is inevitable. But good news, church, there is nothing outside of God's control. There is nothing that is mysterious to him. And so we can trust him even with our mystery, even with our uncertainty, even with our doubts. So here's the thing. What we don't know and what we cannot do ultimately forces us to turn to the one who does know and the one who can do. Solomon doesn't know the answer to the meaning of life, but he points us to the one who does know the answer. The creator, the designer. And if nothing else, we see in what Solomon teaches us is that the creature should submit to the creator, the designed should submit to the designer. This just makes sense. I mean, a tractor wouldn't win the Daytona 500, and a stock car wouldn't be very good at plowing a field. Why not? They're not designed that way. There is satisfaction and there's purpose found in following design. And so we can live our lives spinning our wheels and going nowhere. We can live our lives wasting our lives in many different ways, or we can learn from Solomon's mistake. And we can live our lives for God in the way that he designed us to, for his reasons and for his purpose. And so what is that purpose? How has God designed us? Well, good news, church, what Solomon could not answer fully, Jesus can. And he tells us in John 17, verse 22 through 24, that this is his desire for us, that we would be with him to see and to show his glory. That is the purpose and the meaning of life. It is to be in and to reflect the glory of God. That was Jesus' prayer for his people. I mean, this is where the Westminster Shorter Catechism gets its famous answer. What is the chief end of man? To glorify God and to enjoy him forever. That is the verse that they reference. Jesus' prayer, his desire for us, that we would be with him to see and to show and to share in his glory. This is the purpose and the meaning of life. And though Solomon could not put his finger on it, he pointed us to the one who knows. And so ultimately, Solomon has finally arrived at godly wisdom. We've learned throughout the book that there are three types of wisdom. There's intellectual wisdom, experiential wisdom, and godly wisdom. And Solomon was supernaturally gifted with intellectual wisdom. He gained all of the experiential wisdom, but he wasn't until the very end of his life, at the very end of this book, that he landed on godly wisdom, which is, I guess I should just trust God. In another way we could say it would be Proverbs 10:9, that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of the wisdom, which Solomon also wrote. Do you see the irony here? That Solomon had to come to the end of the matter in order to get to the beginning of godly wisdom. That he exhausted intellectual wisdom, he exhausted experiential wisdom, and he still did not have the answer. But the beginning of finding the answer was, I guess I should trust God. I guess he really is in control. So in humility, he came to the end of his intellectual and experiential wisdom, and he found himself at the beginning of godly wisdom as he began to fear God. So let me ask it again. Are you going to learn from Solomon's mistake, or are you going to have to make it on your own? Don't wait till the end of your life to find that you haven't even come to the beginning of godly wisdom. Don't spend your life on ways that are a waste of life. Fear God, revere him, follow him, keep his commandments, seek to obey him. And this only happens if you would turn from your sin and turn to the Son, to believe in Jesus and to follow him with your life. And this is the beginning of godly wisdom. But it requires that we would set aside our pride, to remember that much is mysterious and that you are not God. That you shouldn't be sitting on the throne of your life, that he should be. So trust in the one who knows all, the one who sees all, the one who controls all. He controls not just the end of this life, but much more importantly, he controls the end of your story. Because what the Bible tells us is that the end of this life is not the end of your story, that all of eternity awaits. And where you spend that eternity is determined by who is your Lord of your life today. So you want to spend eternity in paradise with God, or you want to spend eternity in punishment for your sin? There is obviously a wise choice here. And how do you turn towards that wise choice? You have to fear God and keep his commandments. You turn from your sin. You believe in the Lord Jesus. And this is the beginning of wisdom. We're going to respond to this text by participating in the Lord's Supper together. Pastor Michael is going to lead us through that time, and so he can kind of move into position. Meg, you can move into playing some music for us. But essentially, here's what I want us to realize. As we participate in the Lord's Supper together, it is us, once again, demonstrating that we fear God and we want to keep his commandments. It's us demonstrating that we want to turn from sin and follow him with our lives, and us renewing that vow, that commitment. And so in this way, we will participate together in the Lord's Supper, and we will respond to this text. Following the Lord's Supper, we will also have a song that we'll sing together. If you need to talk with the pastor, that would be a great time to come and talk with one of us. But already now, begin to prepare your hearts as Pastor Michael leads us through this time.